Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Simon Dudley, and I'm Lifesize's video evangelist, which is quite possibly the most stupid title in the world, but it gets me to go and speak in all sorts of places. So I'm afraid to say my Spanish is not suitable for this presentation, let's put it that way. So I'm going to have to do this in English. If I speak too fast, throw things at me. If you don't like what I'm saying, throw things at me. Although Katia, my beautiful assistant here, who works with me at Lifesize, will be the Spanish translator, so throw everything at her, in fact, if there's any problems today. So I hope to do this in English. If we need anything explained, please ask, and Katia will hopefully either tell you the answer, because she's brighter than me, or she will translate for me. Okay, so I want to talk about a bunch of different things today, and I've got half an hour to do it in. So firstly, let's talk about Lifesize just for a moment. Lifesize is a division of Logitech. So if you haven't got a Logitech product in your life somewhere, even if it's in a drawer, then, well, you've probably lived on the moon for the last 30 years. They've sold 1 billion mice, 100 million webcams. They're an enormous organization. They bought us 3 years ago, and that's really all I want to say about Logitech. They're a great company, and we have absolutely nothing to do with them. So the first thing I have to say today, I just wrote this slide about 2 minutes ago, was telepresence is dead. That market was being pumped up by one manufacturer for the last 3 years, and it continually gets smaller. So I think we can all just leave it at that. The telepresence market is over. So I also wanted to say, and again, I'll be brief about this because I want to get to the meat of what I have to say today, which is about infrastructure. I just want to say we have lots of clients who buy our products every day. And they're all on that list, and the list is 60,000 strong. So we're a major player in the industry. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, because at universities it's going to be incredibly important to you, is all those tablets your students keep bringing to college. It's only going to get worse. So one of the things that I want to talk about today is scale and how to make video conferencing move from meeting rooms to a mass deployed technology. So tablets are in fact the fastest growing technology in history. I have a whole bunch of information about this, and I would recommend reading The Economist this week, which talks about the growth of mobile devices, particularly in education, on a global basis. It's fascinating. They think by 2017, 5 billion people on the planet will have a smartphone or a tablet. So that's only 2 billion people less than the entire planet. Tablet users are also very video friendly. So they're already using far more tablets than they are PCs to actually capture information. In fact, I don't know if anyone else feels the same. I'm now getting to the point where I feel I don't need to take a laptop on a business trip. And the idea of doing that even a year ago was ridiculous. Now a tablet can do it all. It nearly had to today when I forgot my dongle for my laptop and nearly had to do this presentation on my iPhone. And in fact, I could have done it, but I realized I had 10 minutes to work out how to do it and cheated, used the laptop. Okay, so let's talk about video infrastructure today. Video infrastructure today is great big proprietary metal boxes. They don't scale. You don't buy one port, you buy 20 or 40 or 80, and at $8,000 to $15,000 a port, the things don't scale. Because even if you can afford to buy one, where are you going to plug it in? Because your internet connection is unlikely to be able to cope with the enormous amount of bandwidth that a single centralized bridge would have to cope with. So what's wrong with this model? Well, it's inefficient. It needs to be deployed by an organization that is an expert in video conferencing. I know we're talking to the education world, but let me explain. The world Fortune 500 companies all have video conferencing managers. Pretty much nobody else does. So if you're a Fortune 500 and you're buying video conferencing, you can understand or have the time to understand these big tin boxes from the manufacturers. If you're everyone else, you've actually got a day job being the IT manager or the IT director or the CIO, and you want video conferencing to be an application, not a specialized piece of kit. It's also an entirely separate thing to manage as well as install. The next thing is cost, and I think certainly for the universities, I had a fantastically interesting lunch today and had to rewrite this entire presentation to try and take into account the effect of that lunch. And it's pretty obvious to me that in Mexico you have an issue with centralized bandwidth, as in there isn't enough. So the ability to distribute it and distribute your resources becomes incredibly important. Virtualization certainly will help that, and big tin boxes do not. They are driving in the wrong direction. And ultimately, there's too much risk. If you have a 80-port $500,000 bridge, do you buy a second $500,000 bridge as backup? Or do you have yourself a clustered VM environment or Hyper-V environment? I know which one scales better. So the Cisco and Polycom model is large, rigid, fixed systems. It's done them very well, by the way. You can make a lot of money. You have to make back the $3.4 billion you paid buying Hamburg, for example. They are lengthy to install, and you have to have skill sets that are outside of the norm, and they are ultimately highly expensive solutions. I don't want to suggest for a moment the quality of the experience can be very good. It can. There's nothing wrong with the user's experience, but from a deployment point of view, there are some major setbacks of any hardware-based technology. So Lifesize decided some years ago now, because we didn't have a vested interest in the hardware video conferencing infrastructure business, that we were in the perfect position to reinvent it. Because we didn't have all this stuff out there already that we were making large profits on. So we thought, well, we'll reinvent ourselves. Just, by the way, like we did back in 2006, when Lifesize kicked off the high-definition video conferencing market with the world's first high-definition system, a product our competitors all told everyone no one needed, and then they said that their version was as good when it wasn't, and then they came up with their own version 3 years later. So it's all a bit of fun, but we've certainly been leading the market now for the last 9 years that we've been in business. In fact, I've been with Lifesize 9 years officially on Wednesday this week. So I will be going home to Austin. As I'm sure you can all tell, I'm from Austin, Texas. And I'll be going home to do a bit of trick-or-treating on 9-year anniversary. Okay, so let's talk about what this is really about. This is about scale. And for you, it could be because you've got the requirement to have 300 bridging ports. But it might be, and in fact it works just as well, if you say, I need 3 bridging ports. The whole point with virtualization and the process that we're going through is that we scale down as well as up. And that is an incredibly powerful experience. So there's a bunch of words in English, which I won't read, but basically what it says is we're the first and in fact only company shipping a range of virtualized infrastructure solutions. I'm going to talk about 3 of those today in no detail at all. And I will be here tonight and tomorrow. And if you want to talk to me in English, then talk to me. If you want to talk to me in Spanish, then grab Cartier and come and see me, and we will talk to you about what can be achieved. Today, I just want to give you an overview of what can be achieved. So let's talk about what UVC gives us. UVC gives us the same advantages that every other virtualized infrastructure or application, should I say, that you already run. So it's fewer devices, it's more energy efficient, it takes a lot less time to put together. In fact, we were talking at lunchtime, and you can put a UVC platform in with all our applications in it for a 30-day trial, and it's quicker to install than most desktop clients. So the days of begging your supplier to let you borrow an MCU for a few months and all the justification, there'll be a URL at the end of this presentation, I think. I seem to remember I put it in. If I didn't, come and see me and I will give it to you. And you can download UVC and you can play with it for 30 days. And as someone said to me the other day, if we like it, can we keep it? And I said, no. If you pay for it, you can keep it. It's not the same thing. You can like it and not have the money and then come and talk to us. So another discussion that came up at lunch was, can I run this on Intel or AMD systems? Yes, of course you can. It's a VM slice. Will it work on an AMD system as well as it will an Intel? No, it'll work better because the AMD processors are more powerful for the price at this point. So think about that. I'm not meant to have this slide up, and I think this is being recorded, and I'm probably going to get fired because officially we support VMware. Very soon, and I mean by the time your 30-day trial finished, we will have hypervisor support as well.
By the way, Simon, it's being recorded by video center.
So I'm being fired. You heard that here first. Never mind. So I might as well really go for it on the grounds that I've got nothing to lose now. So yeah, hypervisor support. I put it in because I knew it was so important to large parts of the audience here today. So reoccurring theme. Actually even looks quite decent on these projectors. Okay, so what UVC gives us today is a range of applications. And I'm going to talk about 3 of them. So we do gatekeepers, we do link integration, we do firewall traversal. But if you think I'm going to stand here and talk to you for half an hour about firewall traversal, you have another thing coming because it's too boring for words. We do it, it works, that's great, move on. So we're going to talk about mobile, we're going to talk about streaming, and we're going to talk about MCUs. So simply, all you have to do as the user is deploy the size or decide the type of deployment you want to put together. We work on the principle, by the way, that you need about a single processor, so a single Intel or AMD processor will do one bridge port. So that gives you a sense of scale. Streaming, of course, is far more efficient, and so is mobile, and you'll see why in a second. So we've already talked about this to an extent. Take it for a test drive. You don't believe me. I wouldn't recommend you do. I'm a marketing guy, but I'm a salesman, and I'm paid by Lifesize to say good things. Every salesperson is. So I have a vested interest to lie. So don't believe me, because I wouldn't. I'd go and test it if I were you and see how you get on. So test drive it for 30 days and see how you get on. And it's up and running in incredibly quick times too. Many clients will try one application at a time because that 30-day trial gives them the opportunity to try just streaming or just multi-pointing or just whatever, desktop, for example. So let's talk about the power of mobility. Lifesize has the largest range of mobile solutions in the market today. So we do an application called ClearC, and ClearC was a product we bought we bought an Italian company 2 years ago called ClearC, and we're now integrating that into Lifesize Story, and that product gives us PCs, Macs, iOS devices, So that's obviously iPads of whatever size, iPods at an enormous range, in fact, over 40 different Android devices. So assuming that you don't give your students their technology and they turn up with it and say, you make it work, Lifesize has the biggest range of technologies already out there. So ClearC and our UVC multipoint, which is our MCU device, work beautifully together, and you'll see in a second why that matters. I've got more slides than I do minutes, so some of these slides don't make it. So to give you an idea, a bridge port on a hardware MCU, in fact, Lifesize makes a beautiful quality 16-port hardware MCU, and it costs something like $5,000 a port. I'm obviously talking US dollars here for a reason, because I don't know the price in pesos. But it's about 5,000 US dollars a port and is the least expensive hardware MCU on the market. Our UVC MCU is $1,500 a port. In fact, a Lifesize UVC MCU is cheaper than the support contract on those big tin MCUs from our competitors. And it gets better. The first thing you notice is, he says with his, the laser is working, I get more than one bridge port. So for those of you on the other side of the room, I get more than one bridge port when I buy a bridge port. So if I could, in theory, buy a UVC server, buy one bridge port for it, and have 4 mobile users on it for $1,500. Because what we don't think is a good idea is using a $15,000 high definition 1080p capable MCU port for a mobile user. That really doesn't scale. And we keep coming back to the point of scale. So what Lifesize MCU does is, because we're freed up from the tyranny of hardware, we can do different things with our licensing. So you can have an environment where desktop, mobile, and full room-based video systems can play very nicely together and incredibly inexpensively. So I want to talk about the differences now between hardware MCUs, and I'll talk about our own, but the rules that apply to ours also apply to our competitors to an extent. We would like to argue that they have bigger compromises, but we have a hardware MCU called Bridge 2200. It does 16 ports in 1080-30 or 720-60 high definition video. If you want to put mobile users on, it will do 16 ports of mobile users. So we can't recommend a Bridge 2200 for a mixed or a mobile or a desktop environment. The box is simply more powerful than it needs to be for those kind of users. But our UVC bridge will give us the ultimate compromise in quality. So it will do 720p, or it will do 480p, but twice the capacity, or it will do 360p at 4 times the quality, or sorry, the capacity. Now, the UVC bridge will increase in quality over time, but at this point, we're pushing the limits of what VMware or Hyper-V can cope with. So it will get better. Another thing to consider, I was looking for a slide that specifically talked of this earlier and I couldn't find it, so we'll talk to this one, is, and I understand from conversations I've had today, this may be important to you, is you could have a distributed environment. We allow clustering of MCUs. So if you have a small campus and you only need 4 ports of MCU on that campus, for example, that would have to be an incredibly small campus, but let's pretend you had one, you could have that as a slave as part of a cluster of other MCUs. And in fact, with the Lifesize hardware and software MCUs, you could mix them. So some clients, for example, use Lifesize 2200 MCU as the best possible quality device. It copes with the highest resolutions and the highest frame rates. And they mix that in a clustered environment with the UVC bridge, which gives them the ultimate scale. In your experience or in your environment, I would guess that you're probably thinking that the best answer is UVC everywhere. And you could have multiple clustered devices. There is a limit, and I cannot remember what it is, but it's a very large number of clustered devices. So you could have one very, very large virtualized MCU spread out across the whole country. And from what I understand of your network conditions here, that could be a very, very useful tool. Subtle is not one of my strong suits. So what I want to talk about now is what happens when different kinds of MCUs fail. So MCUs from Cisco fail when things go wrong. Here's a rad vision. And they've all got clustering. It fails.
What happens when a Polycom MCU fails, even with redundant DMA?
Polycom, I'll give them credit where it's due. They do cope with it in SIP, but not in 323.
Lifesize calls stay up when an MCU fails. This call was hosted in New York, and it transferred to Austin, Texas. End users didn't have to do a thing. Lifesize has the only high availability clustering that keeps your calls up in the event of a failure for both SIP and H323.
So, we started early, and in fact, I'm going to give you some of your evening back unless there's some other questions. But we do, just to reiterate, a number of things that matter to you, or I hope matter to you. I believe they do. We do a virtualized infrastructure solution, which will be an application just like all the others you already have. We do the ability to cluster so that you could have one, or interestingly enough, if you're multiple universities, you could all own your own virtualized MCU and then just have an agreement between each other to cluster them, rather than have to centralize all your MCUs. We have a very wide-ranging desktop solution that also happens to do mobility as well. And the third part of this, which I haven't talked about yet, is our streaming solution. So Lifesize has a product called Video Center, which in fact I'm being fired on right now because it's recording and going off to the internet. And what that allows us to do, and we can give you demos of this at the booth, and we can show this to you in your own environment. Video Center allows you to do a number of things. It will give you unicast streams for multiple thousand users if you have the bandwidth. It will give you multicast streams if you want to do it that way and you have a network that's capable of it. It will allow you to not just record for later viewing, but you can record and stream simultaneously, so that those large instances where your users want to be able to communicate back can do so through chat. Now that's incredibly important, because if you think about a recording solution that only processes the information and then gives it to you later, means that students cannot get involved in a conversation because they weren't there. They have to wait for it to be processed. With the Lifesize process, all your students can watch it on their 3G mobile if they choose to, and they can communicate back to headquarters or the college or the school or the teacher directly and immediately. Their delay is a few seconds. It also gives you channels, and secure channels as well if you choose to do it, so you can check that people have watched views, or that how many of your students actually watched the presentations. Personally, it's very bad for the ego, by the way, when I do a Video Center stream and I do a presentation and it's 45 minutes long, and I start with 200 people, and within 10 minutes I'm down to 50. Because everyone just says, oh, I can't be bothered, and switches it off. And some people say, you need to make them watch it. And other people say, me included, I need to make the presentation shorter. In fact, most of us have an attention span now of 6 minutes, because that's how often the adverts come on the TV every 6 minutes. You don't even notice it. I do. I gave up the TV a long time ago. I saw what was on. There seemed no point, so I had stopped. So we can do all the major elements that are important to this sort of organization. Last thing I haven't said, which we do now, is Blackboard integration with our Video Center product. So if you have an interest in Blackboard for LMS requirements, then we can talk about that. So at this juncture, I know I'm running early, but we started early. Does anyone have any questions? And if they don't, I think I'll be at dinner and the bar and malingering around generally for the next day or so. So thank you for your time. Oh, hang on. Can I just say before, and I think Katia wants to have a word, but I wanted to say thank you. I used to run the Middle East and Africa for Lifesize. I've done almost every job in the company, and I have never done an event in Mexico and have everyone pay attention. That's very good of you, so thank you, because understanding me cannot be that easy. My English doesn't even sound, Americans have trouble with my accent. So for you guys, that was very good of you. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Hola, soy Katia Wiles, soy la directora para Latinoamérica de Lifesize. Quería agradecerle al CUDI por la participación y para que nos den el chance de hablar de